Hey, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about the issue of flow in Leviticus 15. Just as I said in my video regarding the latter half of Leviticus 15, this may come across to some as a weird issue to talk about, but it is a part of the Torah, so we need to consider it. In Leviticus 15, there are a number of laws given regarding issues or flows. These things make a person unclean and can result in defiling objects or other people, and some of them require a sacrificial ritual as a result. Previously, I'd seen the flow described in verses 2 through 15 as somewhat ambiguous. On the one hand, I thought it could include oozing from infected cuts or sores anywhere on the body. Now, doing a lot of manual labor and working around animals, like the sons of Israel would have done, could lead to a lot of these. In some ways, that interpretation seemed impractical, since it would lead to a lot of sacrificing and would lead to a large number of people separated from the camp. To be clear, though, something seeming impractical doesn't automatically make it incorrect, because impractical is a matter of personal opinion, and seeing something as impractical today would not change the command. But in looking at the text, there are some wordings and contexts I think we should pay attention to with this command that make it more clear. At the beginning of this passage, we have this wording: each man that shall be flowing his flow from his flesh. And I want us to compare that with the passage about a woman's period. And a woman that shall be flowing, blood shall be her flow in her flesh. Both of these commands refer to flowing and flesh. Verse 2 has a person flowing his flow from his flesh, while verse 19 refers to her flow in her flesh. This word flesh, basar, in its most literal sense refers to flesh in general, but it is used euphemistically. We can see that in verse 19 and in the following verses, which clearly refer to a woman's period. That flesh is not just any flesh in general, but it is referring to the reproductive organs in this case. Since we know that to be the case later on in this chapter, might that also be the case with the beginning of the chapter? We can consider these two similar wordings. We might also consider what other commands are given in this chapter. Simply because two commands are side by side or in the same chapter doesn't automatically mean they are referring to the same thing. But Leviticus 15 does close itself off by summarizing all of the commands given in the chapter. It does specify itself as its own division of commands. In that summary, we see Leviticus 15:32 through 33. This is the direction of the one flowing, and one whom an emission of seed shall go forth from him, to be unclean by it. And the sick in her separation, and the one flowing his flow, for male and for female, and for the man which shall lie down with an unclean woman. This is the summary of the commands in this chapter. And we can see that all of the other commands deal with reproductive organs. Considering we have that shared context, and considering the similar wording of his flow from his flesh, we are given ample reason to view it as a similar issue, as an infection of such an organ causing a flow. Now that we recognize that, let's consider the text of this command. Leviticus 15:2 through 15. Speak to the sons of Israel, and you shall say to them, each man that shall be flowing his flow from his flesh, he is unclean. and this shall be his uncleanness in his flow. His flesh dribbles his flow, or his flesh causes to seal from his flow. It is his uncleanness. As we saw before, we are dealing with an issue of his flesh. In verse 3, we have a description of the symptoms. The discharge is the main symptom, and it also may include his flesh causes to seal from his flow. Some have pointed to gonorrhea as a possible cause of these symptoms, since it can cause a discharge and also can cause constriction, which connects with his flesh causes to seal from his flow. All of the bed which the one flowing is lying down on it shall be unclean, and all of the article which he is sitting on it shall be unclean. And a man which shall touch his bed shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. And the one sitting on the article which the one flowing is sitting on it, he shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. And the one touching the flesh of the one flowing shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. And if the one flowing shall spit on a clean one, and he shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. And all of the ride which the one flowing is riding on it shall be unclean. And anyone touching in all which shall be under him shall be unclean until the evening. And the one bearing them shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. And all whom the one flowing shall touch him, and he did not rinse his hands in water, and he shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. And a vessel of pottery, which the one flowing shall touch it, shall be broken, and any vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. The person that is flowing becomes unclean, and this person also causes defilement. The bed which he is lying on, and the seat or ride which he is sitting on, are unclean and defile other people. Physical contact with the person can lead to defilement. Finally, if the person touches vessels of pottery or vessels of wood, which could be relevant to the tabernacle services, they are either broken in the case of pottery or washed in the case of wood. These rules are similar to the laws regarding a woman's period, except they are more restrictive. In the case that a person is cleansed from this flow, there is a particular ritual which is done. The same ritual also given at the end of this chapter. And if the one flowing shall cleanse from his flow, and he shall count for him 7 days for his cleansing. And he shall launder his clothes, and he shall wash his flesh in moving water, and he shall cleanse. And in the 8th day he shall take for him 2 turtle doves, or 2 dove squabs. And he shall come before Yahuwah to the opening of the tent of meeting, and he shall give them to the priest. And the priest shall do them, one for sin, and the one as an ascent offering. And the priest shall cover over him before Yahuwah from his flow. When the person is healed from the flow, he counts 7 days from that point. Then he must wash himself and his clothing, so that he is cleansed for the 8th day. On the 8th day, he brings 2 birds to be sacrificed, either 2 young doves or 2 turtle doves. He brings them before Yahuwah, before the opening of the tent of meeting. Just like many of the sacrifices described in the Torah, performing them as commanded requires the tent of meeting. The person must go to that specific place, the tent of meeting, to perform this. There the priest sacrifices them, one as a sin offering and one as an ascent or burnt offering. And this is done to cover over him, to atone for him before Yahuwah, because of the flow he had. And according to Leviticus 15:31, what is a result of these commands? And you shall separate the sons of Israel from their uncleanness, and they shall not die in their uncleanness, in their defiling of my tabernacle, which is in their midst.